Okay, so this is the start of a series I've been procrastinating for a while. One of the most heavily requested tier lists on my entire channel is the melee tier list. And there are a couple of problems with that. First and foremost, there are lots of different types of melees. So I feel like it would be better to section this in a more bite-sized piece. Instead of like 1 hour of me talking about melees, that's how long it took for the ranged weapons, I figured to group it up into the different sections would be better. However, some of the melee sections are really lame. So like the spear tier list might not be that interesting. Maybe I'm wrong. Scythes, hardware, these are not exactly exciting me. I know swords are the most exciting. We're starting there. So I've been putting this off for a while because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. And so, yeah, I figured I'm just going to dive into it. So yeah, let's get this going a little bit. First and foremost, I have to put all of the not fully legendary weapons in D tier. I don't even know all the different melees because some of them are very, very similar looking, and I get them a little bit confused. Like, I think this is the Great Sword. I think that's a legendary one. I think this is the Slice and Dice. I think that's actually a legendary copy. In fact, if I wanted to reference any of these, a lot of the the swords that I'd be interested in are in the melee weapon section. So I can go to the sword section, and you can see that the heavy sword, the Husk Cleaver, looks identical to the purple version. So we have a few different PNGs that are going to be a little confusing. Archer did a great job putting this together, but melees are just kind of recycled from each other. They don't really change, but so are the ranged weapons. So it's going to be a little difficult to keep that in order. And another disclaimer I want to make right away is the fact that a lot of my melee experience and a lot of the math I've done on melees on my channel is based around, how fast it can swing and how well it pairs with Luna. So some of these weapons are weapons I've never even touched before. I don't know the name of this melee off the top of my head. That is a hydraulic weapon, I could tell, but this is what I'm talking about. So this is going to be a little bit more of a casual section where I can't exactly say that I've used every melee in the entire game, but some of the weapons like the pressure cutter that I've skipped are weapons that nobody has ever in the 4 years I've been playing this game made a case for the pressure cutter. Literally nobody has put this in my face and said, yo, this is good. However, the same thing happened with the Clax, and that weapon is literally one of the strongest melees in the entire game. No, I'm not kidding. It's actually that strong. I had to find that out on my own. So I'm going to say there are some exciting discoveries that could be made, but I have to put this in D tier just based on its reputation. I've heard absolutely nothing. We don't have a D tier, or I'm sorry, we don't have an F tier. So the Black Blade can't go as low as it deserves, but I'm going to put that down in D tier. So with all the little disclaimers out of the way, let's get into the fun stuff. Ravager S tier and Spectral Blade S tier. I'm going to get that out of the way just so that we can get into the fun stuff. These are literally insane weapons. In fact, I made a whole video comparing the two of them because they're that strong. So I don't need to explain it. The attack speed, damage, and everything, they're amazing. Corsair is, believe it or not, better than you might think. I'm going to put it in A tier. So let's go back to the Corsair in-game and show you kind of what I'm thinking here, because the Corsair has a good amount of damage on its own, in its own right. And I know it's often been paired with the Jack's Revenge, which was a lot of times it's kind of one of its downfalls. That 6 perk was really a drawback. However, with core reperks, you can get a little bit of a crit rating perk on there. It's not a ton of extra damage, but it is something. So what happens here is you can run this weapon with a crit rating perk, and with a 20% base crit chance, which a lot of melees have, you could get a really good bonus on top of that. And it's maybe a nice thing to consider. It's a good weapon on its own. It's nothing, S tier like I mentioned, obviously, but if you've ever, ignored this weapon, you might want to give it a try. It could be better than you think. Then there's the Dragon's Fang. Oh my gosh, Sue. There's so many weapons in this game, so many melees that are just completely Dragon's Tooth, that just are completely unknown to me. And it actually has it landing 5 hits in a row cause an explosion. When I've used this weapon in the past, it was surprisingly good. B tier is pretty high on this list, by the way. That's how I'm rating things today. It's actually, it's all right. It's all right. It's nothing insane, but it's all right. I'm going to skip ahead to a weapon that I think is interesting, because the Stabs with the Third brings up a debate on what I should consider is good, because this weapon is the fastest swinging base attack speed in the game, I believe. With perks, I know the Spectral Blade can get faster because it can have triple attack, but base swing speed, this weapon takes the cake. And with Paleo Luna, it is way stronger than it should be. And that's why I feel like this is an S tier weapon out on the field, but on its own, with no loadout, which is impractical because that's never what you should be doing, It might just be high A tier. I'm going to put it S tier because you should never be using this weapon with no loadout. Most melees, even like the Ravager, pretty much need a loadout. Ravager is a bad example. That's the one exception. That and the Spectral Blade maybe, but pretty much every melee in the game needs a loadout to kind of make it good. And it's a bit unfortunate, but it's true. And I think S tier is fair for that. Massimini as well. Super high attack speed. It has... So with Luna, it's great, but it even has a good perk choice where I'm not sure if it can have crit rating, crit damage, and attack speed, but it has that 6 perk. After 6 hits, you trigger an explosion, which is so good. And you might notice the wording on that. It is not 6 hits in a row on the same target. No, as you're swinging through a crowd of enemies, you can just delete them, you know, one by one. And as I just checked while I was talking, and you can delete it. You can hit a bunch of enemies and then explode on the 6th one, which is really good because a lot of times with the ranged weapons, hitting 5 enemies in a row triggering an explosion is kind of unfair because a lot of enemies die before you get to that 6th hit, so, or that 5th hit. So if you could just swing through an enemy, you know, just go back and forth, wave through them, stack up 5 hits, and then get an explosion on ranged weapons, it'd be super good, but it's unfortunately impossible. And as you can see, you can run double crit damage on this. You can run crit rating, double crit damage on top of that. You might want an attack speed perk in there, but you could do crit rating, crit damage, and attack speed, which most melees can't, and it's a huge drawback. The Massimini is great. It should be. It's a founder's weapon, but yeah, pretty solid. I don't know. This is the Guardian's Will, right? Yeah, this impressed me. I don't know if it's like S tier insanity, but it's definitely high A tier. I was very, very impressed with this weapon. It does great damage, and it has Affliction, which is a very, very strong 6 perk, especially on a melee. When you're swinging through groups of enemies at once, you can tick them all at the same time for affliction damage and do a lot of extra damage while you're dealing with bigger targets. It's really strong. Not to mention the fact that it has that lunge, which is really good. It can have double movement and that lunge, which gets you around the map very, very well. A weapon that I have actually had recommended to me is the one that's up next. Let me see if I have a copy on hand. Slice and Dice. I've been saving these because this one apparently can have the 5 hits cause an explosion. That could be good, especially for a melee. You know, a little bit of extra damage to the enemies you're attacking could be solid. Slice and Dice, I'll put it B tier just to be fair. I have never used this weapon, so if you guys want like a Slice and Dice video on the channel, I probably should have done that before recording this, but I might do that in the future because I really want to come to these videos as informed as possible. It's just tricky when in the real world, some melees are so much better than the others that the rest of them kind of don't matter. It's just true. But yeah, if the Slice and Dice ends up being good, I'd love to give that a second look. And the Husk, is the Husk Cleaver? What is that even called? Again, guys, I have not even committed some of these to memory. The Husk Cleaver, yeah. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just going to put that one in a question mark C tier. That could be good. Again, I've never heard anybody make a case for it. It's funny because in these tier lists, I bring up weapons that I've never talked about before. So I might not know anything about it, and I've never heard anybody praise it ever. And then as soon as I make the video, there's somebody in the comments who's like, bro, how'd you miss this? It's an amazing weapon. I can't know everything. Krypton Sword, same deal. I've actually tried that one off recommendations. It's a D tier weapon. There's really not much there, but it's insanely good. Flix, thank you for following. If you guys ever want to check these videos out live, I do record these on stream because they're super fun, pretty casual, and yeah, Twitch link down below if you ever want to hang out. It's a good time. We have only great melees left. Actually, no, Slice and Dice. This is interesting. This is not Slice and Dice. This is, what is it called? Because this weapon is a clone of the Stormblade, and the Stormblade, well, it got some parental treatment that this weapon did not. I don't even have a copy of it. Oh, come on. Is it only in the collection book? Whatever. Well, it's pretty not great on its own. Like, low C tier is being generous. But I'm also going to put the Stormblade in S tier, and that might be a confusing pick for some of you. Like, wait, how could these weapons be clones, but one is way better? It's crit hits cause an explosion. It's literally that strong. That 1/6 perk is so powerful that the Stormblade is literally an S tier SMG. Jesus Christ, I've been recording a lot of videos today. It's literally an S tier sword. It is very strong. This crit hits cause an explosion. You put Wet Out Fiona in the lead, totally rocking out. I made a video on this. I'll link it down below if I can remember. It might be easy to find, but I did a fun 160s video where this weapon is nuts, and the best perks on this is there as well, along with the rest of the best perks for these swords down below. Stormblade, crit hits cause an explosion. It's nuts. It's a very, very, like, it booms, does area of effect damage, it's got everything. It's great. Kiljoy as well. S tier is hard to sell because it has that 44% damage to elementals, which puts it over the edge. I don't know about S tier because it doesn't really do everything like an S tier weapon should. I'll put it very high A tier. That's what I'll do because I pull out this weapon occasionally when I'm looking at fun. Double attack speed, crit damage, like it's a great weapon, and I put the crit damage in there because I use Whiteout Fiona in support, and a base 15% is a pretty good jumping off point. So it's also not where you're getting most of the damage, and I believe it's a dead perk over there. Yeah, it's either like crit rating, which we don't need if we're not critting hard, and then life legion damage to miss monsters is not a big deal. So yeah, I'm looking at the wrong perk because I am just exhausted from recording too many videos today. But yeah, it's a great weapon. That extra 44% goes a long way against elemental targets, and definitely something you should try. This weapon is escaping my brain, even though I know totally what it is. Come on, the Tree of Light. There we go. It is a slow swinging, high damage, high impact, and knockback sword. I have never seen much value in it, but it has its fans. I'll put it in low A tier because I think it hits hard enough to like kind of pull its own weight, but it's not a generalist. It's not good at like crowd clearing. It doesn't swing fast enough. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've never been wildly impressed by this weapon, so it's like barely A tier in my brain, but I could be wrong. You put it in B, Dudewood? Yeah, I don't know. It's barely A tier, as I said. And I'm going to put this weapon in S tier just because it's a small list. And that's kind of why I wanted to break up the melees. I mean, yeah, I get more videos out of the same topic, but we've already been here for 11 minutes, and we were just talking about swords, which is like an eighth of the melees. The vacuum tube sword is a weapon that would normally be lower because it's locked to nature, meaning it's only really useful in water zones and maybe nature. It's doing 67% of its damage towards other nature enemies, which is basically a third of its damage. Boop, cut right off the top. But it has that chain lightning, which is, again, just like the Storm Blade, I can't ignore the fact that this weapon has chain lightning, which gives it so much area of effect damage. It basically means whenever you kill an enemy, you're also damaging 6 more of the other enemies. Or if there aren't that many enemies nearby, it's chaining between them. It's a lot of extra damage, and it goes a long way. This weapon is usable in nature zones, but it's hard to not recommend maybe a stronger weapon in that case. Maybe like a Kiljoy with fire might be better, but it won't be chaining. So vacuum tube sword in nature and water zones is super useful. Useless in fire zones, but a very, very strong weapon. I highly recommend using it the next time you see a water zone because it's extremely strong. Wow, 12 minutes on swords. I kind of feared this would happen. So I'm going to try and test out more melees in the future because I don't like not knowing everything when I go into a tier list. But some of these weapons are just so mediocre, as I gather from the community, that I've never even given them a try. If I'm wrong and I need to turn one of these bottom ones into a video, you comment down below. I would love to do that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment what you guys want to see in the future. Stay tuned for the future melees because I will definitely cover the rest of these now that I've started it. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one, and take it easy.